All right, guys, today we are going over Seneca's fifth letter to Lucilius. This letter is called On the Philosopher's Mean, and let's jump right into it. So he says here in verse 1, I commend you and rejoice in the fact that you are persistent in your studies, and that putting all else aside, you make it each day your endeavor to become a better man. I do not merely exhort you to keep at it. I actually beg you to do so. I warn you, however, not to act after the fashion of those who desire to be conspicuous rather than to improve, by doing things which will rouse comment as regards to your dress or general way of living. So all that he's saying here is he's saying, like, look here, I'm commending you on what you're doing. You're doing a great job. Like, keep on going after what you're doing. That endeavor to become a better man. That's great. That's awesome. But and in fact, he's saying I'm actually begging you to continue to do that. However, don't act in a way that's going to draw attention to you by doing things that are going to draw attention to the fact that you're studying philosophy and becoming a philosopher. Don't do those things, right? And that's, you'll find that this is going to be really the content of this letter. He says in verse 2, repellent attire, unkempt hair, slovenly beard, open scorn of silver dishes, a couch on the bare earth, and any other perverted forms of self-display are to be avoided. The mere name of philosophy, however quietly pursued, is an object of sufficient scorn. And what would happen if we should begin to separate ourselves from the customs of our fellow men? Inwardly, we ought to be different in all respects, but our exterior should conform to society. So what he's saying here is he's saying don't put on a display of your spirituality, all right? Don't put on a display of your personal development. Don't think that you should act differently and be this kind of, unique person that draws all this attention to you just because you're studying philosophy, right? So, this goes for you in your life, right? You're studying Stoic philosophy, and many times people who start to go down the path of personal development, they start to believe they know more than they do, and then they start to act weird. They start to do things that are unnatural and that really turn people off. He's saying here that philosophy itself, it has plenty of scorn. People are just going to dislike you because you're practicing philosophy, right? Believe me, as someone who talks about Stoicism all the time, people are often like, oh, they have a negative response to that. Or if I talk about libertarianism, oh my God, people get so upset by something that is so logical and makes so much sense, all right? So he's saying that don't add to this, all right? You should be inwardly different, but outwardly you should look the same. People need to be able to relate to you, which he's going to go into a little bit more here. He says here in verse 3, do not wear too fine nor yet too frowsy a toga. One needs no silver plate encrusted and embossed in solid gold, but we should not believe the lack of silver and gold to be proof of a simple life. Let us try to maintain a higher standard of life than that of the multitude, but not a contrary standard. Otherwise, we shall frighten away and repel the very persons whom we are trying to improve. We also bring it about that they are unwilling to imitate us in anything because they are afraid lest they might be compelled to imitate us in everything. So he's saying here, if we break this down, he's saying that, look, you shouldn't be wearing something exuberant. You shouldn't be trying to appear to be so humble and you don't need anything in life. And, as a Stoic, you should know that, you don't need all this stuff. But the point is that you don't need to display that outwardly. In fact, if you do that, what's going to happen is that if you're trying to prove of how Stoic you are, how religious you are, how pious you are, how spiritual you are, whatever the thing is in your life, then what's going to happen is that you're going to turn people away because they're going to see that, okay, and they're going to see that it's an outward appearance, and you're going to look weird. You're going to frighten them, and you're supposed to be trying to change the world. You're supposed to be trying to help people. You're supposed to be trying to influence people in this philosophy that you've discovered in personal development, whatever it is, right? This goes for religion as well. But if you do this, what's going to happen is you're going to scare away the exact people that you're trying to attract. And not only that, is that they're not going to start to imitate the mindset that you have, because then they're going to associate it with all the weird other stuff, and they're going to be afraid that, hey, if they start listening to the logical things that you're saying, that they'll also start doing the weird stuff as well, and that's not what they signed up for. In verse 4, he says, the first thing which philosophy undertakes is to give undertakes to give is fellow feeling with all men. In other words, sympathy and sociability. We part company with our promise if we were unlike other men. We must see to it that the means by which we wish to draw admiration be not absurd and odious. Our motto, as you know, is live according to nature, but it is quite contrary to nature to torture the body, to hate unlabored elegance, to be dirty on purpose, to eat food that is not only plain but disgusting and forbidding. So what he's saying here is that the whole point is that you should have sympathy and sociability with other people. That is really the idea here. And so you can't be, he says, we part company with our promise if we're unlike other men. So you have to be down to earth, right? Someone has to be able to relate to you. If you are just so aesthetic, if you are such a person that is so devoted to showing how humble and how spiritual you are, or how religious you are, or whatever it is, it's going to turn people off. Okay. And you'll be doing the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to help people to relate to you, right? What good is a philosophy if it's only for the extremely disciplined or the high and mighty? It needs to be applicable to the common man. They need to be able to see that relation, right? And he's saying it's even against it anyway. If Stoicism is to say to live according to nature, then it's not natural to torture yourself. Okay, it's not natural to be dirty on purpose, to eat food that is only plain, not only plain but disgusting and forbidding. So what you can really take from this is that, look, as a Stoic, or you should know, that it doesn't matter what you wear. It doesn't matter what you eat. You don't have to. That extravagance and hedonistic lifestyle is not going to bring you true inner peace and happiness. You should know those things. Yet chasing the opposite, right? Trying to purposely eat food that is disgusting, or doing stuff that is, that just proves a complete disregard for caring about any kind of comfort or luxury, is actually ridiculous as well, because it's not according to nature. Verse 5, he says, just as it is a sign of luxury to seek out dainties, so it is madness to avoid that which is customary and can be purchased at no great price. Philosophy calls for plain living, but not for penance. And we may perfectly well be plain and neat at the same time. This is the mean of which I approve. Our life should observe a happy medium between the ways of a sage and the ways of the world at large. All men should admire it, but they should understand it also. So again, and the reason why he's saying this is at this time, which it still applies to modern time, is that at this time there were all these various sects of different philosophies, and people were doing all kinds of extreme stuff. There was a guy that was living in a barrel. Okay, there were people that were going around naked and eating dirt off the floor and all kinds of ridiculous stuff to show their devotion and their aestheticism. All right. And what he's saying here is that this is ridiculous. Okay. It is not necessary. And it's not even what the philosophy entails. You're trying to just get this outward appearance, and it's making everyone look bad. So stop doing this, right? He says, if they look closely, or he says that it's madness to avoid which is customary and can be purchased at no great price, right? So he's saying, like, trying to purposely live on such meager means is ridiculous, right? Plain living, but not penance, right? So he's saying that you don't have to be extravagant, and you shouldn't be, but it also doesn't mean to take it to the extreme, and now you're trying to torture yourself. That's not the idea. Now there are instances where it would make sense as a Stoic to practice poverty, to see what it's like, but not to constantly live there. It's a ridiculous thing to do. That's not the thing. He's saying that you should have a happy medium between the ways of a sage and the ways of the world at large. It should be in between, right? You should be living a balanced life, right? If you feel like you have to go to extremes, then you're probably trying to prove something. In verse 6, he says, well then, shall we act like other men? Shall there be no distinction between ourselves and the world? Yes, a very great one. Let men find that we are unlike the common herd if they look closely. If they visit us at home, they should admire us rather than our household appointments. He is a great man who uses earthenware dishes as if it were silver, but he is equally great who uses silver as it were earthenware. It is the sign of an unstable mind to not be able to endure riches. So again, he's saying that he he's saying to the question of we just be normal, just act like other men? What's the difference? How are we philosophers? How are we learning anything or developing ourselves? And what he's saying is that, yeah, people should see that you're different when they look carefully, not from seeing that you start doing weird stuff. They should look at you and they should see how, perhaps you handle your temper and you don't have it, and how you're able to control your emotions, or to master those emotions, right? He's saying that if they come over to your house, they should see that it doesn't matter what kind of dishes you have, if you have silverware, if you have earthenware, if you have fancy stuff or plain stuff, that you use them interchangeably, right? It doesn't matter that you don't place some special significance on fancy stuff, like, look at all this fancy stuff that I have. And at the same time, you're not like, look at how humble I am. I just use paper plates for everything. It doesn't matter. You could use a paper plate or a fancy dish. You treat them all the same because you understand that they are all the same and that it is insignificant. That is the key that he's saying here. Okay. And he's saying, he says this, that it's a sign of an unstable mind to not be able to endure riches. So again, you don't have to be completely humble. Like, if you have the means, if you can make money, then make the money. That's great. You should be able to handle that without it going to your head, without you suddenly becoming extravagant and putting all this value on the monetary. If it gets taken from you, it gets taken from you, right? You should live that way, that if you have it, then great. If you don't have it, also great. It doesn't matter. In verse 7, he says, "But I wish to share with you today's prophet also. I find the writings of our Hecato that the limiting of desires helps also to cure fears. Cease to hope," he says, "and you will cease to fear. But how?" you will reply, "can things so different go side by side? In this way, my dear Lucilius, though they do seem at variance, yet they are really united. Just as the same chain fastens the prisoner and the soldier who guards him, so hope and fear, dissimilar as they are, keep step together. Fear follows hope." So he's going to follow on here, but what he's essentially saying here is he's quoting another philosopher, Hecato, and he's saying that this guy said, "Cease to hope and you will cease to fear." And he's saying that, well, you might say, well, how can those things be connected? How is it such that if you don't hope, you won't fear? It doesn't make sense. Those are completely different things. And the answer, which he's going to get to here, is that it lies into looking forward to the future. If you are depending on the future, if you're not living in the present, then you are going to fear. And hope comes first, because when you hope for the future, then you also fear of that hope not happening, or you fear the events that could happen, or the things that could change, or that could upset your life. And so you will have fear from that. In verse 8, he says, "I'm not surprised that they proceed in this way. Each alike belongs to a mind that is in suspense, a mind that is fretted by looking forward to the future. But the chief cause of both these ills is that we do not adapt ourselves to the present, but we send our thoughts a long way ahead. And so foresight, the noblest of blessing of the human race, becomes perverted." So this is exactly what he's saying. He's saying that the problem is that both of these things are tied together because you're looking to the future. And if you're constantly looking to the future, whether that be in hope or be in fear, you're going to be disappointed, right? And you're going to be anxious. He's saying that each belongs to a mind that's in suspense and fretted. So you're going to have anxiety if you're hoping for the future, if you're hoping for some event to happen, or you're going to have anxiety if you're fearing something that could happen in the future. They're both exactly the same thing. Hope and fear are really the same idea, right? Both of them are trying to influence or control or have an expectation on the future reality, right? One of them is you don't want something to happen. The other is you do want something to happen, but it's the same exact thing. You're still trying to look to the future, and you're in suspense for the future instead of accepting what is now. In verse 9, he says, "Beasts avoid dangers which they see, and when they have escaped them, they are free from care. But we men torment ourselves over that which is to come, as well as that over that which is past. Many of our blessings bring bane to us, for memory recalls the tortures of fear, while foresight anticipates them. The present alone can make no man wretched. Farewell." So again, he's saying that even animals, what animals do is if there's something to be afraid of, the animal is afraid of it in that moment. But as soon as he's out of the bounds of that thing that he was afraid of, the animal is no longer afraid. He's free. He's good to go. All right. But what we do is we torment ourselves from the things that are in the past, the fears that we have had, those experiences are trauma, and we torment ourselves for the things in the future that we're afraid are going to happen. And so, because we're anticipating them. And so, he's basically saying that the present alone is what you need to be in, because if you're in the present, then you're not going to be afraid and you're not going to have the anxiety. And so you have to stay in this present and not focus on the future and not focus on the past, which it's really interesting because, this is something that was written, how many, 1,000 years ago. And it's so relevant today, right? You hear this today in the idea of mindfulness and the present moment awareness in those kind of focuses, because it really is a fundamental truth of reality, is that as a human, you're going to be tortured if you're looking to the future or you're looking to the past. So in summation, really what he's saying in this letter is two things, right? One, hey, look, it's great that you're on this path of personal development and you're growing and you're learning Stoic philosophy and you're watching these videos and everything, but don't make it so ridiculous. Don't start changing your life in such ridiculous ways that everyone knows, oh, you're a Stoic, and or whatever it is. Even if it's just a spiritual practice that you're doing, or religion. People do this with religion all the time, and they put people off. Whatever it is that you believe truly that you're living your life by, just exemplify it in how you live your life, not the outward appearance of it. Don't make a big deal of it. Try to blend in and be like normal people, even though inwardly, yes, you are different, and they will see that difference in interacting with you. They don't need to see that difference from you acting like a weirdo. Okay, this is where a lot of really good teachings get left behind, because people see that thing and they see the weirdness associated with it, and they don't want to have anything to do with it. And then he's saying, the other thing about this, where he's ending the letter with a little bit of wisdom, is don't be worried about the future. Don't hope for the future. Don't fear the future. Stop thinking about the future. Instead, think about the present moment. If you do that, then you'll be happy in this moment and you'll avoid a lot of anxiety in life. I'll see you tomorrow.